Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Purpose Tune podcast. The goal of my show is to create valuable content to broaden your knowledge, inspire you to act, and get you in the right mindset so you can apply it in your own life to drive impact, generate meaning, and achieve your purpose. Today's episode's guest is Jeff Nischwitz. Jeff is known as a snow globe shaker, shaking things up, who's on a mission to help people shift how they lead and thereby shift their leadership impact. Jeff's the founder of the Nischwitz group, a speaking, consulting, and coaching company that transforms people and organizations one truth at a time. He also co-hosts Leadership Junkies podcast, which you can check it out. I'll include the link to his bio. Jeff has also published four leadership and business books, including his most recent, Just One Step, Walking Backwards to the Present on the Camino Trail. He's also currently working on his next book, Snow Globe Leadership, which will be published later this year, specifically in November. So Jeff, let's check in. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me, John. It's so excited about this conversation and a pleasure to see you again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I know last time we connected a few months ago, you had me on your show as a guest, and now it's a pleasure to have you on my show. And I think that tells a lot about who we are in terms of our connection, as well as the space that we come from and that we click. I'm very passionate about leadership. Growing up, I volunteered in the community and saw that I can leverage my skills to make good in the world. And so and I continue to leverage those skills today. And so I know you've had some pretty phenomenal guests on your show. Specifically, this podcast is about purpose. Let's just dive right in. What is purpose to you, and how does it show up in your life?
You know, that's such a good question, because I think that word gets thrown around a lot, and I've thrown it around, and I've started to, I guess, trim it down to what it really means. And I think of it in two ways. One is like this idea of finding purpose, which to me can be about meaning. It can be about a why in my life, in my profession, in my business. And I hesitate. I think that is so powerful. And I see so many people who are trying to find this big, giant purpose or meaning for their life. And that's true for some people, but for some people, it's just figuring out who they are and getting connected to living and doing life on purpose, which is a little different, which to me is a more of a version of intentionality and purposefulness. So to me, it depends on which conversation we're having. And I've been blessed to do both. And on a macro level, I feel like my business, as you read in my bio, I feel like I'm on a mission. For me, it's a calling, and it goes beyond my business. So that's my purpose, is to help people see themselves differently as leaders and lead differently in their lives and make a greater impact. And I look every day at what are the micro ways that I can be more purposeful to live and lead and interact with clients and everybody in my life in a more purposeful, intentional way. So that to me is being more on purpose. So I look at both of those a little differently, and they're definitely related, but they're a little different.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So what are some of the practices that you incorporate into your daily routine to remind yourself to be on purpose?
Well, part of it is a commitment. It's a decision, and that begins with understanding and being willing to admit how much I'm not on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And to, I guess, actually it's interesting because I'm working on my new book right now, Snow Globe Leadership, and I just finished a chapter this morning that has a section called The Leader Pause
Mm-hmm.
in it. And it's about leaders. And let me be really clear at the beginning. To me, leaders are not about position. It's about leadership opportunities, even in our day-to-day lives and wherever you are in the organization. I call it leading without permission or position. But to me, leaders have to be able to develop this slowing down of themselves. Some of this is emotional intelligence, some is self-awareness, some is self-regulation, because too often the issues we create are from reacting. And if we can create that pause, that's why I call it the leader pause. That's when I can, in that moment, say, okay, uh, what's more purposeful here? What is my intention here? What am I trying to create? What might be the unintended impact, or the unintended impact I create that I don't want to create? How might, if I get reactive with people, it probably doesn't serve our communication. So a lot of this is slowing it down, creating that moment of pause. And to be honest, Kong, one of the simplest practices is to learn to just take a breath in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
When I feel, and it's not hard to figure out when I need it, because it's when I'm in that, we can feel reactive energy in our body. You just feel like something want to fly. I want to fly back. I want to react, to just take a breath. And now I can make a different choice. That alone was purposeful. Taking the breath was purposeful. And I guess the practice I would offer to folks to think about is, um, as I'm going through my day, having my interactions, that yes, I want to take the breath. I want to feel that energy of reaction, and just remind myself that when I'm more purposeful, I'm more intentional. And when I'm more intentional, I'm a better leader, is the bottom line.
Mm, that's great. That's those are amazing practices that I hope that folks listening on this episode will take away and incorporate into their own lives. I think that the pause principle is so important, especially at a time when things are continuing to change with the pandemic and how it's affecting our lives personally and professionally. It's good to actually step back and reflect on our current situation, where we are in it, and how we want to see ourselves through. And there's so much negativity in the news, simply about the number of people infected and hospitals being overcrowded with folks who have COVID, which is very unfortunate. And part of this show is to really inject some positivity into this world we live in. And it's not to say, look, we're avoiding the realistic situation here, but also to say there are a lot of good in this world, and to get people's mindset to be shifted in a way that could help them think through things more clearly. And I think that the pause principle is definitely a type of resource that I tap into as well. So how did you get involved in your line of work? What drew you into the leadership space?
Well, I'd love to tell you it was a great plan, brilliantly executed, and it was neither. It
Mm,
was, in reality, it was very much more like, I like to say, it was a car wreck, where I was going down the highway at a high rate of speed, which I tend to do in life. Thought it was a good direction. It seemed to make sense, the direction, and left the highway. The car and driver flipped over a number of times.
mm,
And fortunately, the car landed on its wheels. Car was damaged. Frankly, the driver was damaged. I took some real knocks in my life, had some significant failures. And after having a lot of success, I had had a lot of success in my first career as a lawyer. And we may come back to that, because that was sort of some purpose driven decision making. But when that metaphoric car wreck happened, there was a lot of hesitancy, but the car was pointing in a direction. I drove in that direction. And when people say, they literally challenge me and say, I don't believe you. Come on, you had to have a plan. I didn't, because what happened was I had always wanted to write a book. I decided to write a book. At the time I wrote the book back in the mid 2000s, I had a job. I did not have a business. I wasn't a coach. I didn't have a consultancy. I wasn't a speaker. None of the things I do today. I just wanted to write a book. I had no purpose except I wanted to write and publish a book. And this guy bought the book. This guy who ran a law firm in Charleston, West Virginia, he bought the book, called me up and said, "Hey, I bought your book. I love it. You're using it in our firm. It's really a great book about running law businesses," which is what it was about. And he said, "Do you do coaching?" And that's where I learned a powerful lesson in saying yes. At the time, I wasn't a coach. I didn't do coaching. I didn't have a business, but I said yes. And we created a coaching program for a lot of his employees. And 6 months later, I had coached like 13 of their folks. And I said, this is what I want to do. And I didn't do it right away. I needed one more kick or nudge to get into the business. But ultimately, that's, brought me to the point today. The business has evolved. I've evolved, but still today, now 13 or coming up on 13 years later, I am a coach. I am a speaker. I am a trainer. I do consulting, and it's a focus now on leadership and building teams and cultures and growing businesses. But it all started with me doing something I wanted to do that was on purpose, even though there was no plan with it, and then saying yes when the opportunity presented itself.
Isn't it funny how we sometimes jump into certain tasks or things and it just kind of like works out, right? And that kind of reminds me of the story that sorry, I can't remember the name of the initial co-founder of Netflix, but he mentioned that when they initially launched Netflix, they didn't really have like a long-term strategy or vision of what Netflix would be. It was more like they were just testing things out on the fly, and eventually things just sort of fell into place, and it worked out. And now Netflix is huge, and so um, and I think that in leadership we need to be comfortable with ambiguity and just like the whole notion of that things could change and we should adapt and be resilient to change. What's your
Was
take
that
on?
Mark Randolph, by the way?
Yes, I think it is Mark Randolph. Yes.
Well, that's really funny you say that because you probably didn't notice this, but my email signature has a quote from Mark Randolph that's been there for about 5 years.
Oh,
Because, yeah, he has a quote that says, "You have to disrupt yourself before someone else does."
mhm.
And that has been my mantra for 6 or 7 years now, about the need to disrupt ourselves, disrupt our thinking, disrupt our organizations, disrupt everything. That's why I'm known as the snow globe shaker, because it's about that disruptive thinking, that what if we did this? What if we tried this? How about this? Yeah, Netflix really talk about being unplanned but very purpose driven, right?
Right,
They intended
exactly.
to disrupt an industry, but they just tried stuff.
Right, and he's such an incredible entrepreneur. I mean, he started multiple businesses and have sold them out and they've been acquired, and definitely someone that I follow on social media in terms of the wisdom that he generates. And he's also managed to balance work and life as well. He talks a lot about how he doesn't want each new business that he starts, he doesn't want that to equate to a new wife, in the sense that he wants to maintain what he has at home and keep it that way, and have and his greatest accomplishment isn't the businesses that he have are created and sold, but also but his relationships with his wife and kids. And what's your take on work and life balance in today's marketplace?
Um, well, here's where I may be a little disruptive. First of all, I almost never, I'd like to say never, but there's probably an odd situation in there. But I don't use the word balance, because I think balance, or the pursuit of balance, is causing some of our problems. in that if you think about what balance is, it's literally equal, right? Maybe it's off a little bit. And the reality is that we in the working world, especially in the US, none of us work and play. It's rare. I'm sorry. Rare people actually have a balance in that way. There's, if you take out sleep, and if hopefully we're resting ourselves, if you take out sleep, nearly every person that I know works more than they don't work. And it's so easy to focus on balance as being time, but it's really about presence. And it's really about, I come back to intentionality. And I also think it's a lot about integration. I'm blessed. I am really blessed because my business and my mission in my business is so interrelated with my personal mission and what I care about. So I'm often doing things that people say, is this for your business or your personal life? I said, what's the difference? Because they're not any different. And that doesn't mean you have to have your own business. But I guess this is the real challenge to folks. Number one is to stop thinking about balance and start thinking about being present.
Mhm.
Balance versus presence. So let me give you a quick example of someone who's an extreme athlete. I'm not one of those. There's a guy named Jesse Itzler. You may have heard of him. He's written a couple books. He's owned a couple businesses, done very well. His wife is the founder of Spanx. Um, but he's an ultra athlete. And I heard him speak once, and he talked about the importance of being present wherever you are. And that when he's going to get into training for a big race, he might train for a whole month or more intense. And he'll tell his family, look, for the next month, I'm not going to be around as much as I usually am. So in
Mhm.
that case, he doesn't have time balance. He doesn't. But what he does do is when that's up, then they're going to take like a 3 or 4 week vacation where they get his undivided attention. He's not on his phone all the time. And if you think about that, part of our challenge today is we've become an instant response culture.
Mhm.
And so many people don't have separation from their business. And they either are afraid to separate it or they feel like they're not allowed to because their leader or their boss is available all the time and reaching out to them all the time. So they think I got to be connected all the time.
Mhm.
And we never turn it off.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
never shift gears into the other. And I think that and setting boundaries around that is more important than trying to figure out what balance is.
Right. Yeah, I really think each person has their own type of schedule and what works for them. For example, like I'm more creative in the evening than I am in the mornings. And so the way how I operate with work and such is just sometimes different from people. And so I think balance is really determined on, a person's preference, how they see themselves, in terms of, investing their time in work and investing their time in the relationships. um Speaking of, so I see you have a stack of books there behind you. What are some of the um what are some of your favorite leadership books that you could recommend to folks, to help them, either enhance their leadership abilities or just be more in the present?
Well, yeah, that I won't cheat here because the top row is my books. Uh, I mean, I love my books, but the things that come to mind for me are still a big fan of Good to Great. It's about 20 years old now, and people like to take shots at it because some of the businesses that were great then are gone now.
Hmm.
But the principles in it, I just love. So I still love Good to Great. I'm a big from a business running a business side, grow a business. I love the Rockefeller Habits, which is another wonderful book, probably 15 years old. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. So his Start with Why and Leaders Eat Last are fantastic books on leadership and purpose. This is a bit of an unusual one. Um, there's a book by a guy named Viktor Frankl
Hmm.
called Man's Search for Meaning. that was, I think it was published in the 1940s. Viktor Frankl was a survivor of the Holocaust, lost almost everyone in his family. But the simple concept that comes from his book is this idea that no matter what your circumstances are, you always have the choice as to how you experience those circumstances. And it's not about putting on a happy face.
Mhm.
It's about literally shifting how you see the situation. And you alluded to earlier in one of your comments, Kong, this idea of, um, positivity. And I'll tell you, I'm not a fan of positivity, only because to me it engenders this idea of pretending.
Mhm.
And I'm not a fan of pretending what's going on, but I do have a choice in how I see things.
Mhm.
And I have labeled myself an itist, an ITIST, not a pessimist, not an optimist, not a realist, because all three of those feel like a bit of a fake.
Mhm.
And for me, an itist means I see what's actually happening and I'm really good at not putting labels on it. And when I put labels on it, that's when I get into trouble. That's when I create stress. That's when I'm not at my best as a person, as a partner, as a leader. So, an example would be during COVID, so many people were focused, and I guess it's a form of gratitude goggles,
Mhm.
but everybody was focused on what they couldn't do. And it created stress and anxiety and anger and sadness. And I tended to focus on what I could do because
Right.
I couldn't change what I couldn't do. Now I might be able to do it differently. And I just ended up doing a lot of things that I still could do. So I didn't have to be positive. I just had a positive experience because I saw it differently. And I tend to do that now. It's almost like an automatic muscle that I will just see. Because here, the last comment I'll make on this is I tend to see, I realize that most of the stress in my life and in most people's life and anxiety and uncertainty and fear is based upon how we interpret what has happened versus what actually happened. And these labels and potential outcomes that we put onto these things. And, your question was about books, but the reason I bring this up is I am a big fan of looking and reading regularly books about my own personal growth
Mhm.
because I believe that I can't be a better leader than I am in terms of leading myself, and I can't grow a business bigger than I grow myself. So I read a lot of leadership books, business books. I do like history, my occasional nonfiction, but I read a lot about personal growth and personal development,
Mhm.
becoming more aware, more conscious, as I believe that's the foundation of leaders when you're leading people, which is what leadership's about.
Right. Yeah, it's leadership comes from within, it's inside out. And if you don't have the solid foundations of a leader, then it would be impossible to effectively lead people. And we would have very few followers. So there's a point in which you said, about looking at a situation in a different light. Um, and it kind of reminds me of the Shakespeare's quote, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so, right? And again, it goes back to this whole mindset that it's not so much about the woo-woo, like, power of positive thinking, although there are some data and research that does support that when you shift your mind into positive thinking, that it does do amazing things for you in your life. But also the fact that if you look at it, we're innately born to look at things in a negative light. And if we could train our mind to see things in a way that's more positive, then we get to, see the world a little bit differently. And that could hopefully enrich our lives in terms of our relationships and such. And so I think an example of this that shows up recently in my life was, so I'm currently, in the job market looking for work, and aside from building this podcast, and Um, and I've undergone multiple interviews, but in this process of job hunting, I keep telling myself, or at least automatically, you know, when will I get my next role? Because this is taking a little bit longer than usual. And what I found is that it was just an automatic way of me looking at the world, and trying to get the world to meet my expectations when the when the universe has something different for me. So I don't know what that is, but when I can pause and reflect on the process and say, and appreciate that, I am currently where I am now, and I should appreciate where I am now. And it is what it is, accept it, don't resist to it, then things will happen gradually. And now I've got, three interviews that I just wrapped up, last week, and one this week. And it's just been pretty incredible to see how, when I shift the way how I look at things, that those things change and my energy changes, which gives a sign to the universe that that I am ready to accept certain things in my life. And that's where these interviews are continue to fall on my plate without me resisting to it. It's pretty fascinating how that works, the law of the universe.
Who said that? I think it was Wayne Dyer. And a lot of people said, but I think Wayne Dyer said that when you change how you see the world changes in front of you.
Mm,
And I used to think that was a metaphor, and then I realized it was literal. It
mm,
is very literal. And I'm also a fan of Broadway. And there's a show I saw a few years ago called Kinky Boots, which is a very entertaining show. And you wouldn't think big life lessons, but actually at the end of the show, they tell you what the life lessons were in the show as part of the show. It's really quite humorous. Like, I've never seen that. And one of them was this short phrase: you change the world when you change your mind.
mhm,
Well, gosh, that is just so true. And it may not always be easy, but I love the simplicity of it.
mhm,
And part of the challenge we have that I tell people to resist is our language is actually designed to hurt us.
mhm,
Wasn't intended that way, because, and someone had to help me with this. The English language in particular is, what is the word? It's gosh, whatever the word is that means it's an either or. Is that
mhm.
binary?
I think so.
Yeah, binary. So it's good or bad. It's black or white. It's positive or negative. So the words we have, and we'll say, let's use those words. But like when you said, I didn't get the job offer.
Mhm.
Is that good or bad? Is it positive or negative? I
Right.
would argue nobody knows. I know how I feel about it. And
Mhm,
if I, if depending on how I look at it, I may have what I consider some negative emotions that probably don't serve me in the moment or my next interview.
mhm,
Like, I've met the folks who are looking for jobs and they get into this trap, and it's a horrible trap of thinking, I can't believe no one is seeing how good I am.
mhm.
So now they walk into every interview with this chip on their shoulder, which is not confidence. It comes across as arrogance. And they'll say, I don't understand. But somehow someone picked up on that energy of someone saying, hey, you realize how amazing I am, versus knowing how amazing you are and just
Right.
showing up and letting them see you.
Mhm,
So I think there's a challenge in our language because it encourages us to pick a lane.
mhm,
And frankly, we live in a culture where our lane tends to go to the negative,
mhm. Right.
which is where I'm usually going to have a conversation with someone who says, that's just awful. I go, okay, what made it awful? What do you mean? It's obviously awful. I don't know. Tell me what made it awful.
Mhm,
And I will tell you a really quick story. A real life example of this is in a very sad moment. January of 2018, still remembering date and time. January 15th, my mother died. And I was lucky to be with her when she died. And the moment she took her last breath, I vividly remember at the exact same moment, exact same together, experiencing incredibly deep grief and tears of grief and immense joy.
Mm.
Not that she had died, but that I had been there and that I got to witness the simplicity of it. There was this beauty in her passing. It was just an ending. And I look at that and say, so my mother just died. What's the emotion? Is that good or bad, positive or negative? Most people would say, well, that's bad, that's negative. Well, I guess if she was really sick, no, it was just that remember the it is that she took her last breath. And I experienced deep grief and deep joy at the exact same time. And if that's true, which it is because I proved it, why can't I live my life that way
Mm-hmm.
and just have those moments and those experiences without trying to label them and put them in boxes or, for God's sake, turn them off?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to turn either one of those off,
Right.
even though one was painful. I didn't want to turn it off because if I had turned that one off, then I wouldn't have felt the joy.
Right. Exactly. It's almost there's there's two sides to everything, right? Like we have to be vulnerable in order to experience not just pain, but also joy, happiness, and love. It's only that can enable us to experience those elements of life or of humanity, our humanity, right? And so I thank you for sharing that such a powerful story with you and your mother. I think it's one that really draws in who you are as a person, but also how you look at life. And I think that when we are resistant to certain things that are happening in our life, we tend to resist to that, which then generates more stress and anxiety. And instead, just accept things as they are, knowing that we can't control the universe, and that we can, if we can just step back and pause, as you say, and just reflect, and then take the action steps that's needed to get us to where we need to be, um, while at the same time realizing that it is what it is, then we can be a lot happier. Our emotional state will be in a better place. You mentioned about that you're a fan of Broadway, and I want to just pick your brain on when you're going through challenging times, either with your business or in life. Like, what are some of the things you do to make um, your life more, I guess, I don't want to say at ease, but um, be in a place where you can actually be more creative while going through these challenges.
So there's two things, and I'll touch on the first more briefly because we've already referenced a little bit. I do in many ways, I hate to use this term again, so minimalizing, but the idea of mindset. How am I choosing to see it? And there's a couple core principles that I use and fall back on. One is the deeply held belief that I always have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I always have a choice. No matter what, I always have a choice. May not be a easy choice, or, but I always have a choice. So I'm always looking for the choices. And when I see the choices, then I feel empowered
Mm-hmm.
and see the opportunity. Whereas if I don't see the choices, I can feel like I'm limited or the impossibility. So I always have a choice. A second one that's closely related is that I don't control anything except me. So I do not get lost in spending time on things I don't control. If I don't control it at all, then here's my little question. Here's a little toolkit for your listeners. Whatever scenario I'm in, especially one that is some sort of challenge, I ask myself, first of all, is it important? Because believe it or not, there are times that I was getting worked up over things that weren't really that important.
Mm-hmm.
And I let go of a lot of things by asking and answering that question. I go, you know what? Not really. So if it's not important, it's done for me.
Mhm.
If it is important, then my second question is, do I control it? If I control it, then I look for what action can I make, that choice I can make. And if it's not, if I don't control it, I have one more question, which is, can I influence it? And if I can influence it, then I take action to influence it. Because what I've learned is when I'm in action, I don't feel stress. I don't feel doubt. I mean, I feel some uncertainty, but I don't have the stress and anxiety and fear because I'm in action.
Mhm.
And I've also learned this little tidbit that we only stress about the things we don't control. So if I focus on what I do control versus what I don't control, I rarely have those challenging moments. So that's that's the perspective mindset, mind shift stuff. In terms of daily practices, I just get to the things I love doing. I love being around people. And there's lots of ways to be around people. People said I couldn't be around people during COVID. Look, during COVID, one of the top three things I missed was hugs. I'm a huge hugger. I am actually known for my hugs.
Mhm.
There are people who go, I want to go to some event because if Jeff's there, I can get a Jeff hug. That's what they're called. I didn't get a lot of hugs during COVID, but I could still connect with people and have really deep conversations because that opens me up and it reminds me of my humanness and our shared human experience.
Mhm.
I love Broadway. I'll listen to the music. It's on my regular playlist. Um, I like to get out in nature. For me, kayaking is really fun, or go for a walk. And these seem so simple, but anything we can do. I love. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Con. It's. I love red wine. And when I pour a glass of red wine, it's not the alcohol that relaxes me. There's something about just holding in my hand relaxes me. I
Mhm.
also enjoy cigars. Now, and the interesting thing is I couldn't figure out why cigars relaxed me,
Mhm.
but I figured it out during COVID
Mhm.
with the help of a friend because you can't rush a cigar. A cigar is a slow play.
Mhm.
That's what it is. And, you know, a cigar is anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. So when you
Mhm.
sit down with a cigar, you're not rushing through life. You're settling in for a while, whether I'm alone or with other people. So find the things that fill you up, feed yourself with those, and also look for the things that will help you slow it down.
Mhm.
Just slow it down. I'm telling you, when people say, I like to go hard and fast, I say, are you really that self important? That usually knocks them back a moment.
Mhm.
Like, I get it. I can go hard too. But then I started thinking about why am I going so hard? What am I trying to compensate for? And the last thing I'll share, I know I'm getting long winded here, is I also reached this conclusion that leaders don't run
Mhm.
unless it's life or death. If it's life or death, and I mean real life or death, not like there's a business crisis. I'm talking about, if I don't get there quickly, and even then, I don't have to run. And so I notice when I find myself running, either literally or metaphorically, I slow down and say, what are you running for, Jeff?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, slow down. Probably make a better decision. When I'm running, my stress levels up. I can slow down. I can walk and remind myself that I'm not that important that I got to run all the time.
Mhm.
So slow it down, folks.
Yeah,
Life is truly, truly too short to just run through it.
definitely. I think a lot of us, again, going back to the whole mindset, need to change or the way how we look at things in terms of we are rushing to get work done so that we could enjoy life. When really if we could just enjoy life in the process of getting work done, we're essentially being in the present moment and enjoying life. And that kind of reminds me of the process, when you have a goal and you're trying to achieve it, what's after that when you have achieved it? It's the process that makes it fun. And similarly to this discussion, it's a process that makes life enjoyable. And if we rush through that process, we're going to miss out on life. And, of course, there's all these tactics that we have to incorporate, such as being present, the whole pause principle, and when we're in this process, all of that is important to really generate meaning out of the things we do. And that brings me to my next question, which is, how do you define success?
I'm still working on it. Um, because I really believe this beyond any possible cliches. Success is totally individual.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the word success. I actually we did a podcast interview earlier today, and we were talking about this preoccupation still with winning. And I said the problem with it is no one even knows what it means or why they're doing it. Like I'll say, why is it important to win? And it's like, everybody knows that. Really? Well, then just tell me. I've never gotten a clear answer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's better than losing. Well, tell me why it is. Well, what do you want to play to lose? I didn't say that. I said, what is winning and
Mm-hmm.
why does it matter? And I would say the same thing to success. So I tend not to think about success. I think about significance
Mm-hmm.
and impact. And from a real life experience, because I'll tell you, I mentioned earlier, I used to be a lawyer. When I decided to quit practicing law, I was a success in every possible measure I'd ever heard at that point. I had my own business. I'd been through all the education to become a lawyer. I was successful and I was really good at it. I had my own business, making more money than I'd ever imagined. I had quality of life at the time because I'd figured out how to do that too. I
Mm-hmm.
had my family. I was killing it.
Mm-hmm.
I had success at every level except I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. And no one ever told me that happy was part of success. And I said, I can't do this. And I walked away from all of that success, not even knowing what I was going to do. And as I mentioned earlier, I had a huge failure after that. I started a business that was a huge failure. And I don't regret it for a minute. I would have done things differently just to maybe I could have avoided the failure, but I left all that so-called success to find significance and meaning and to do something that mattered to me. I didn't start a nonprofit, and maybe that is for some people, but I found my way back to me. So I guess success for me is finding a path to being the best human I can be,
Mm-hmm.
which means being the best father I can be, the best partner I can be, the best leader I can be. And when you say, what does that mean? It's I don't know, except I know whether it feels right or not. And
Mm-hmm.
today I live a life and run a business based upon real values, core values in the business and in my personal life. Things I ask myself every day, am I living my values? What decision aligns with my values? I feel my life feels full today, even on my worst day in the success category.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID, my business was a horrible year last year, but I still felt so filled up last year
Mm-hmm.
and very little stress because I lived and led all the ways we've talked about. So success to me starts with, I guess I'll say this, it starts with throwing out the word success
Mm-hmm.
and just ask yourself, what do you want your life to be?
Mm-hmm.
And once you figure out what you want that to be, and I think one thing we don't talk about enough is legacy. I think we all want a legacy. What do I want that to be? Not in terms of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you this, you know, I turned 62 years old this summer. I consider it still pretty young. I feel great. I don't feel like, I don't even know what that's supposed to feel. I feel younger than other people my age.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know when my last breath will come. I hope it's not for a while, but not because I'm afraid. I just feel like there's some more impact to have.
Mm-hmm.
But if today is my last day, not that I did anything stupendous today, but I had a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
I did a couple interviews today and learned something, and I thought about things. I had lunch with my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
I did some writing. It's a pretty good day,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'm okay with that. So maybe I've already found success. In fact, probably have. So the only question is, what's my day going to look like tomorrow? It's not about being more successful.
Mm-hmm.
I've arrived and I'm still on a journey.
Mm-hmm. I love the fact that you said that it's a work in progress, and that we could change the term success to significance, that it brings a whole new meaning, and to look at the word differently and the concept of success differently. That's not just about winning, but also about failure, and how I think failure is the one of the most incredible experiences that can be given to us, because we learn so much about who we are, as a person, as a leader, as a member of the community, whatnot. And all of those things are important to bettering ourselves, to go from good to great, in that book you mentioned. And it sounds like you're someone who is at peace with all that you've done, and you're in a good state of mind. And that if today, let's say, was your last day that you would leave on this earth, in a place better than when you found it. And I can just sense that energy coming from you, how real and genuine it is, and also just the light that comes out, because you have such a profound understanding of who you are as a human being, and what you've accomplished, and the way how you look at things in life. And you know um, and it takes a lot of internal work to get to a place where you are, and a lot of years of of mistakes and failures to get there. And so I'm so happy that I can get you on the show, and really to leverage these experiences that you have, that could be provided as wisdom, to my listeners, and to get them to think about these things, as early as possible, because at the end of the day, life is short. Today is not a promise, tomorrow's not a promise, and we have to act on our hopes, our dreams, act accordingly to how we deep down want ourselves to be. One of the greatest things I love about the Oprah show and her is that she's such a soulful human being, and she comes from this place of positivity and light, and I don't want to use the word, but it is what it is, a lot of love, right? And it's incredible to see someone who can transition from either a bad state of mind to a good state of mind, or change their bad demeanors into good demeanors, and be a better person because of seeing the world a little differently. And I suppose, speaking of Oprah, what are some of your inspirations? What lights your soul on fire? What keeps you up? I'm sorry. What wakes you up and gets you excited?
Um, hmm, Interesting question. So mentioned some of them earlier. One thing I love is I call them intimate conversations.
Mm,
And people go, "Oh my God, what do you mean intimate?" It just means you're being real with a group of people,
right.
sitting down, having a conversation, whether it's in person, which sometimes it is, or it's, on a Zoom call or something like that. I love that. That lifts me up. I
Mm,
talked about some of the things about getting out and enjoying nature.
mhm,
I do tend to love entertainment. I'm really jonesing to get back to Broadway theater. But I listen to music. I listen to podcasts myself. I listen to books.
mhm,
Um, I tend to see the world, it's kind of an oddity in me. Maybe it's because of the generation I grew up in. I tend to see a lot of leadership and life lessons in entertainment, like movie
mhm,
and television. And
mhm,
I also then see how they go both ways. Like I'll see things in life and go, "Oh, that was like in that movie," or else, and I tend to see things that others didn't.
Mm.
Like I'll recount a scene. I'm like, I don't remember that scene. They'll go, but that's really powerful. I said, I know, right? But we didn't hear it. I just tend to see it that way.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
uh,
think.
it's about being, it's back to being intentional. The more I'm intentional, the more I'm on course, and the more I'm on course and intentional, the more peace and joy I have, and
Mhm.
I have the better impacts. I think your point is right. And I want to highlight this because I know some people hear this and think, oh, you must be just gliding through life.
Mm.
Not at all. I mean, there's a ferocity to my life, but it's not I've learned that I can be fierce and intentional and purpose driven without going like a maniac on fire. And at the same time, if people who've met me will say, Jeff's on fire, man, he's going after it. I am. And I'm in this state of peace and calm. It's not either or. Remember, I said earlier, our language is either or. No, I am on fire. I believe I have a lot more lives to touch,
Mhm.
and I'm at peace at who I am today.
Mhm.
It's a both. It's not a either.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. It's knowing the dynamics of your I don't know, your personality, I suppose, or who you are as a person, and leveraging those abilities when you need to, while at the same time keeping yourself centered and focus on being intentional and purpose driven. And I love that, all of that. um, I know we're about that time. Do you have any advice for my listeners, or last advice for my listeners as it comes to purpose and meaning at all?
A couple. Some of this is just wisdom I've borrowed. One is a bumper sticker wisdom. I remember this bumper sticker I saw years ago that said, "Be careful what you think."
Mm,
And I don't know if someone else said it, or I know I've thought it a lot, which is, don't believe what you think,
mm,
because we live in a world where our default is to our thinking,
mhm,
but our thinking is the source of all our fears, all our doubts, all our uncertainties, and all the stories we make up about ourselves and what the world is or isn't. And so I want to get more in alignment with trusting my heart and my gut and those instincts I have, not relying just on logic. So that's one. And the other is, this is one of the big paradoxes, and you alluded to it, Kong. It's an ongoing journey. I've done a lot of work on myself, and I know there's more work to be done. I
mhm,
haven't quit. I've just transitioned to the next level of work. So I can be on this journey of always looking to grow and develop, and at the same time enjoy that journey.
mhm,
And here's the piece I want people to hear. Nearly every human being that I've ever met, and most that I don't even know about, I know it's true. We have some version of a question in our mind of, am I enough? Am I smart enough? Am I wise enough? Am I good looking enough? Am I thin enough? Am I enough? Or the other version is, who am I to think I can do or be this?
mhm,
And it's a lie that you've either told yourself or accepted from another. And so this is the paradox. You're already enough, and commit to growth. Do both. It'll be an amazing ride. And you'll change the world. It may not be on a national world scale, but it might be. It may not even may not go beyond your friend's scale, and that's enough too.
mhm,
I believe everybody has the ability to change the world,
mhm,
one person at a time, one conversation at a time, and start with yourself.
mhm.
So that's my thought.
That's incredible. Well, folks, there you have it. All that wisdom packed into in an hour. That's incredible wisdom, Jeff. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, the good news is I have a really unusual last name. If you can spell my last name, you can find me. It's N as in Nancy, Ischwitz. The website's nischwitzgroup.com. I'm on all forms of social media under Jeff Nischwitz. Yeah, I'm easy to find, and I'd love to hear your stories. Like I said earlier, I love connecting with people and hearing their stories and their journeys.
Hmm. Hmm.
And thank you for having me, Kong.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And folks, if you like this podcast episode, please do put a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and hit subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you all later. Thank you.